Hi, this is Pat from Sew 406, coming to you from my studio in beautiful Western Montana. All right, so we're on to the next step for our beautiful heart table runner. So we've pieced all of our hearts and we've put them together here. So we've measured this, squared this all up, and now it's time for the borders. So in the pattern, I have the approximate sizes of what your borders will be, but it really is best to measure your piece so far to get the correct sizes. So on the first border, we're going to stitch the two end borders on. I did that. That's pretty quick and simple. I just take this measure or lay it next to it and cut it the same size there. Now we're going to take our next strip and we're going to cut this to size. I'm going to cut my selvage edge off first. This is the 1.5 inch strip of the background fabric, and I'm just going to trim this off here. Now, if you have a table large enough to have it laid out and cut your border right next to it, that works great. So I'll just lay this out here and match it up on the end and then cut it this way. So I actually like to put it on top and do that. This is a thin fabric so we can see through this. Okay, so I'm going to cut it right where my other border ends. Make sure I make a straight cut here. Okay. Now what we want to do is we want to make sure that we get it lined up. If you don't measure it the same size, you just figure you'll just stitch it on and then cut off what's there. You can have difficulties with it getting wavy. So what we're going to do to not have that happen is we are going to measure the center of both our strip and our table runner piece. Okay, so I've pressed the strip there and I'm going to fold it in half again so I get my quarter mark as well. Now you can put a pin in them if you like, whatever works best for you. Now we want to do the same thing to our table runner. So I'm going to fold this in half. Okay, so my half mark is right on my center seam. And then if I fold it in half again, there is my center mark. I'm going to put a little quick press in there. So that's actually the quarter mark. So now we're going to line up I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in these. I see it right there. Okay, so now we are going to match up our points here. If you don't have a table big enough to measure, to lay it on and cut next to it, just take your tape measure and measure all the way from the corner to corner, and then just cut the same size piece on your binding. All right, so we have here our center mark. It goes on our center seam. Okay. And then we're going to take our other two marks and match them up with, let me move that out of the way, match that up with our crease here. So we have the quarter marks and the half marks on our bindings. I mean borders, sorry, I keep saying that. Okay, so that way it's going to be nice and smooth, exactly the size that we want it. Okay. Okay. So now we are going to go to the machine and stitch this on, and then we'll do exactly the same thing with the other end of the long side of the first border. Okay, so we'll be right back after we get this sewn on. Okay, so I've sewn the two long borders, the first border on. I've pressed this one. We're going to press the seam towards the outside. So just set this seam real quick. Okay, now we're going to press it out towards the border. Make sure that it's nice and smooth there. Comes out all the way. Okay, then I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to use my acorn pressing pen. You can also use a starch on it if you like, a spray starch, whatever is your favorite thing to use to flatten your seams. When I press to one side, I like to put this on the top as I press the final. When I press it open, I put this on the underside on the seam after I've done my first press open. So you just see just how wonderfully flat that is. Again, this should be available at your local quilt shop. All right, last one. Okay, let's move this out of the way. Okay, so you could probably see that my points don't, of the bottom of the heart is a little bit flattened, but that's because I had the one heart square that was a little short, or a little smaller than the other, so I trimmed it down. If you haven't had to trim it, your points will probably just come out right there at that 1/4 inch seam. So, okay, so now we've got the first border on. Let's go on with the second border. Now I can still fit this on my table, and we are going to do the long borders first on this one. Now, because this is a variegated, I need to decide if I like it in the middle. Let me cut this little selvage edge off here. Use that in a few minutes, so we'll keep that there. So, how do I like this? Do I like it with, you know, all dark? Do I like it with medium? You know, it's like, do I do it partially light? I think I'm gonna go more towards the dark, but maybe, yeah, I think I like the dark a little bit better. Okay, so I can still get this on my table, so I'm just going to do the same thing, and I am going to put it right next to it, and cut it the right size. Now I can't see this through this fabric as well as I did the last one, so I'm going to do it this way so I can see where I'm going. And we're going to just line this up. You can, again, you can measure it, which is what we will most likely need to do on the second one, or the third border, because my table won't be long enough. Okay, so there we are lined up. So I'm just going to cut that right there, double check. Okay, there we go. And cut that off. And then we're going to prepare this exactly the same way that we did before. We're going to get our center and our quarter lines, and then we're going to stitch it on in a 1/4 inch seam. So we're going to do the 2 long sides, and then we're going to do the short sides on this one first. So we will be back here at the table right after I get this sewn on. Okay, so we have all the borders here sewn on except for the last one. So on the second border here, we did the short end first, and then the long ends. I just like the way that it looks, makes it framed. And then on the third border, we did the short ones first, just like we did on the first border. So I've sewn on these three final borders here, and I've got this last one ready to go. So we're gonna go stitch that, and then we'll get back to the table and get our final steps done, getting ready for quilting. Okay, so we've got all our borders on. Our table runner is all pieced. So we're going to get ready for the quilt sandwich. What we want to do first is make sure that we got everything nice and squared. So to do that, we're going to take our larger ruler, my 12-inch ruler right here, and I'm going to line up on the corner, see where I am. It's pretty good. I could get a little trim there. Let's see here. Yeah, not bad. Okay, so we just trim this just a little bit. Here. There, looks good. Now I'll slide this down a little bit, and then I'll get my longer ruler and match up with this. And see how we look there on the long end. Running out of room on my table. Yeah, pretty good there too. Just a little tiny trim. Okay, so we're going to do that on all sides and the corners. Now go back this direction. If you have a long enough ruler and a long enough table, you could stack your rulers till you get it there. Okay, now I'd already trimmed up, the other side, so we are good to go. Now we're going to make our quilt sandwich. Okay, so there we are. We're all nice and squared up, and everything is pressed here. So we are going to take our backing. You want to make sure you don't have a lot of dark threads on your light colors. You kind of just trim these off a little bit if they're into your light and can be seen behind. You don't want that showing up if you've got the light color there. So I've done some, but they seem to come right back. So, alrighty. I think that's pretty darn good there. Okay. Now, lots of threads, huh? Okay. Okay, so now we're going to take our backing and make sure that it's pressed nice and neat. You want your backing about 2 inches bigger than your finished piece there. So let's see. Yep, I think that's a good side. Okay, then we're going to take our batting and lay it on top. And then there's different ways to attach this. You can use a spray, a temporary spray adhesive, if you like. Again, available at your local quilt shop. Smooth this all out. Okay, and then we're going to put our finished piece on top, giving lots of room around so it can shrink a little bit when you quilt. Okay, so you can again use a spray adhesive on this, or these pins are great. They are a curved pin, and they make it easy to pin your things in place, and makes it easy to close them with the curve on them. So just go through and put your pieces together like this, and then quilt as you would like. So this one has been quilted just with a straight line, kind of an echo around the heart, and then straight line quilting from there, and then a straight line around the borders. So looks great. So then you will go ahead and quilt this as you like, do any trimming up that you might need to do, and then prepare your binding and put your binding on in whichever method you prefer. So I appreciate you coming by and sewing with me these last few days, and I hope that you've enjoyed this. I hope to do more sew-alongs as we go. If you have a suggestion for a pattern or something you'd like to see me do, please contact me, send me an email, or comment on the videos, and just please feel free to subscribe so you get notifications when the next videos come out. And share your finished project with me on social media. I'd really appreciate that. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a grand and glorious day.